Today, we're going on a boat. One of two Boblo Boats, the steamship St. Clair, is docked on Detroit's east side over by St. Jean. That's where work is underway to restore the 112-year-old vessel that was part of millions of memories for Detroiters. Welcome to Your Daily Detroit for Thursday, September 29th, 2022. I'm Jer Stays. Back in 2018, the St. Clair was thought dead by many of the public, who believed it could not be saved after a major fire. But Dr. Ron Coutu and his family are starting to prove doubters wrong, pouring in more than $1 million so far to redo the structure. After most of a lifetime in Detroit, what I've learned is not to watch the hype or the renderings, but the progress. And when I went on board, I saw progress. That part of town is pretty familiar to me. For many years, a mix of partiers at the marina, weekend boaters, and various nautical construction projects strewn about. I remember seeing the St. Clair weeks before the fire. I was visiting some old friends of my grandmother's, a night of hornado shots on a boat that was a former gay bar in Windsor. The St. Clair was a stunning sight in the evening light, and I can't help but be cautiously optimistic as I start to see it rise again. Instead of me sharing all the details of what's ahead and the plan so far, here's project manager Stephen Farage, the brother-in-law of the owner.
The final destination, like I said, is not set in stone quite yet, but we do know that we want it to be a dockside attraction on the Detroit River in Detroit, accessible to the public. We want to create an area on the riverfront where the public can come and enjoy the riverfront and enjoy the boat. Whether it's here or somewhere else, I can't really speak for the future, but I do know that it will be a dockside attraction. We're not going to go up and down the river. We'd rather keep it safe and keep it in one place and create an environment around it. We feel like it's more just about the Boblo, history to the ship. So yeah, as well as repowering the ship, to do that would require not only a lot more finances, but there's a lot of risk and a lot of different things that go into it. You're dealing with insurance, Coast Guard. You're dealing with the boat going up and down the river, and you're dealing with the possibility of the ship getting damaged or something after all that work being put into it. We feel like, if we create it as a dockside attraction, we can have other vessels here that can give people short narrated tours up and down the river and bring you back to our boat. And that's something that we're thinking about too. Like I said, we really want to create an environment around it. But for the ship herself, she will probably that will allow us to build a dock that goes all the way around the ship, allowing people to come by boat and moor up. We would have to take so much of the original steam engine and if you ask me, so much of the Boblo boat out of it, it wouldn't be worth it. We'd rather preserve the original steam engine. We will run it on electrical motors so it can spin and you will still be able to look just like you did as a kid down the engine room and see it move. But we feel it would be much more beneficial to preserve the original steam engine and add it as part of the tour than to gut it and try to make this boat go up and down the river.
And what about a timeline for this project?
God willing, like I said, 2 to 3 years. I'm looking at by the one more year mark. We've got by the end of this year, there's gonna be a whole nother level like what you're walking on. I know it's hard to imagine this, but there's gonna be a whole nother level just like it in about a month.
Above us?
Yes. So that's how quick the lumber aspect happens once you're done with the steel superstructure part. So we're hoping by the end of this year we'll have that deck up, and then maybe even the pilot house. If not, early spring we'll do the pilot house. So after that, we've got, like I said, plumbing, electrical, and finish work. You're looking at a year or two for that. But before all that happens, remember, we do want to try to get people on board as soon as possible. So fingers crossed, we're going to do our diligence and try to make that happen next year. But as far as final project being done, optimistically speaking, 3 years. We would like to do a haunted house on it next year. So, like I said, God willing, we can get everything ready and done. We would do that. If not, maybe the next year. But we think it would be, the ship did do haunted houses before and people like that too. We think that it would be cool once we have the structure work done, before we get into the finish work, to use that transition to do a haunt really quick. So that's something that we are, that's in the works possibly.
There's also a documentary out, Boblo Boats, a Detroit Ferry Tale. It stars Motown legend Martha Reeves as the voice of the Columbia, the St. Clair's sister. It helps tie together the history and importance of Boblo, even to those who never wrote it. Here's the director.
I'm Aaron Schillinger, director of Boblo Boats, a Detroit Ferry Tale.
So what drew you to the Boblo project and the Boblo history and mythology, really?
I unfortunately never had the chance to go to Boblo when it was in operation, but I was connected to SS Columbia to do some fundraising videos for them. And this was in 2015. I went out to Toledo to see the boat in dry dock, and my first thought was, man, you guys should just build a new boat because this one's in terrible shape. You know, she was rotted, her decks were rotting, and it was all rusted holes. And they were like, no, you don't understand. Like, this boat is an important part of history. And I was like, okay. And then they were like, and you know, there's a woman who can talk to the boat, right? I was like, whoa, okay.
Oh, wow.
So I met this psychic named Gloria, who's one of the main characters in the film, who can speak to Columbia, and Columbia talks to her. They have a psychic relationship. And so that was my entryway. And then when I found out that Columbia had a sister ship, and they both had different mythic personalities, and they used to take people to an island amusement park, I was just all in to the film.
Let's talk about these mythic personalities. All right. First off, did the psychic tell any stories about this girl?
About Claire?
Claire, yeah, St. Clair.
Gloria, the psychic who can speak to Columbia, she was not able to talk to Claire.
Okay.
And she told me once that she's kind of glad because she was a little scared about what energy might be coming off of Claire. A lot of people felt like this boat is haunted that we're on right now. As a matter of fact, there's a Boblo Museum exhibit that is in Marine City as part of the movie, and there's a door of the St. Clair there. And starting 2 days ago, people are starting to get a little freaked out about the door because there's a sequence in the movie talking about the haunting of Claire, and now people are hearing noises like in off hours around the door. A lot of people also describe Claire as like the younger party girl, where she was kind of getting in trouble, like things happened on her. Columbia's the older regal sister who, like, she was built a bit grander than Claire. Columbia was built as a ship of prestige for the Detroit and Windsor Ferry Company. And then 7 years later, they added Claire just to kind of move the people. So she's shorter, fatter, and a bit of a plotter.
Okay. And what's kind of the age difference between the two of them for the uninitiated?
Yeah, Columbia was built in 1902, and St. Clair 7 years later in 1910.
So when it comes to the restoration of the St. Clair and tying it into what your projects and everything, like what kind of energy do you feel? Like what is the vibe when you're standing on this deck? So people know we are on the dance floor, right? Like we're a place where there was like thousands upon thousands of people had memories here. Like there's got to be a vibe to that.
Yeah, it's just amazing to imagine all the history that took place on this boat. And the energy is just, it's a very calm energy because we're out on the river, you know. But if you just kind of close your eyes and listen, Gloria, the psychic in the film, will tell you that she can hear people's voices and the dancing and the laughing. I'm just so proud of the St. Clair people for continuing to restore her. You know, Dr. Ron Coutu, the owner, and Steve Farage, the restoration manager, they've put so much, not just money, but time, sweat, blood, and tears into this boat. And when people see when they watch the movie, it's not been easy for them. They've had a lot of obstacles.
Yeah, let's talk about kind of the movie and kind of how it's come together for you, because it's also been a lot of artistic work for you too, right?
Yeah, so the narrator of the documentary is Martha Reeves. And so we decided to write the narration from the perspective of Columbia herself. So it's like kind of a boat telling her story about Detroit and her sister St. Clair.
My sister Claire and I would take families by the thousands for a summer of fun.
We wanted to film to feel because when you were a kid going to Boblo, it was just this delightful experience. So I never got to go.
But I think that connection piece is important, right? Because as a geriatric millennial, as they say, you know, I'm on that very edge of people who could go. But there's so many people who are involved, interested in Detroit that don't have those memories. But I think it's important to draw a through line for people. Like, to me, this is as important of an asset as, like, you know, Fago or, you know, the Tigers or any of these other things. Like, Boblo is part of the mythos of the Motor City.
Boblo is definitely part of Detroit still, even though it closed down in 1993. I mean, people still talk about it. Like, you just say the word Boblo and someone's face lights up, you know? And it was an affordable day of family fun for so many people. And, you know, you can tell the story of Detroit by also telling the story of Boblo. And that's also what drew me to the subject. Because as Detroit was getting ready, heading towards bankruptcy, Boblo shut down. We lost Boblo, you know? Mm-hmm. And as Detroit was this booming economic city, that's when the kind of Boblo was having its peak experience.
I mean, people forget this is a world-class city that was, I think, at its peak, 4th in population in the entire country. Like that, I think that's a whole different kind of feeling than I think what a lot of people see now. Like, I think a lot of people see resurgence, or they see, you know, wherever position of the city they're in and they see it from. Like, Detroit's history had these amazing things like Boblo. And then also there's a bunch of history to that island too, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, you can't tell the story of Detroit without, well, I'll say you can't tell the story of Boblo without telling the story of Detroit. And you can't tell the story of Detroit without talking about race. Mm-hmm. And of course, race played a part on Boblo because the park used to be segregated, like most parks, amusement parks across the country. Detroit should be proud because their park was desegregated before many of the others in 1948. Thanks to this young woman named Sarah Elizabeth Ray, who was kicked off the Boblo boat because she was black. Coleman Young was also kicked off the boat, but when Sarah Elizabeth Ray was kicked off, she went to the NAACP and convinced them to take up her case. So they sued the Boblo Excursion Company. In the case, she won. It went all the way to the Supreme Court because they kept appealing. And at that time, Thurgood Marshall was arguing the case on her behalf. And when he won the case, Boblo was integrated, but not only that, Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP used the Boblo case as a test case for many other civil rights cases, also leading up to Brown versus Board of Education. You can see it in the NAACP papers referencing the Boblo case.
You know, people get frustrated with the pace of change, but as I've gotten older, what I've learned is that change happens slowly, then quickly. And this is a key part of that change, to see that integration of something that, I mean, it carried thousands of passengers on the regular.
You know, everybody really did go to Boblo. The people who are around today who went to Boblo, unless they've seen the Boblo Boats film, most people don't know about that history of segregation. So it's kind of shocking, you know, because they would just see black, white, other races, you know, they had Mexican Day on Boblo. Like, I don't think many people thought about that history of segregation before. And so we feel like now that, you know, Black Lives Matter movement kind of is in people's consciousness, you have to take the bad history with the good, you know. And so that's what the movie's about. It's about honoring the civil rights legacy of Boblo while also paying homage to so many of the fun, happy memories that people have.
And from what I can tell, this is a movie that isn't just about the facts and figures, but really tries to connect you to the story, right?
Yeah, we use, in addition to kind of the magical narrator, we have a lot of stop motion animation that we use in order to transport people kind of back in time and to capture the magic that was going to Boblo.
Well, where can people check out the movie, the run, all that stuff?
Film is in 20 theaters across the Great Lakes region. You can find all the showtimes at our website, bobloboatsfilm.com. You can also just Google the movie, Boblo Boats Film, showtimes, and then Google will tell you where to go.
All right, what do you think of all this? dailydetroit@gmail.com. Also, special thanks to Luciano Marcone behind the scenes. He joined me on this one and helped with pictures, video, and audio. I appreciate him, and I appreciate you for listening. If you'd like to support what we're doing financially, patreon.com/dailydetroit. It takes many hours to put shows like this together. I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we will talk tomorrow.